How do? Welcome back to Geology James with me, Jim Gelder. It occurred to us that I've got a site called Geology James. I've got two videos on it, and neither of them are to do with geology. So today I'm hopefully going to put that right. I've got a redux remastered version of the Glossop Award presentation that I gave in 2004 on the A34 M4 Junction 13 improvements project. This project in Chalk and Lambeth Group, where we got some absolutely fantastic exposures of solution features and the transition from the Chalk into the Lambeth Group. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. And then at the end of that, I've been up into my attic and dug out some photos from 2003 of the geology, which I'll just talk through after the presentation's finished. So hope you enjoy that. I'm going to get out of the way now and let you enjoy the presentation, and I'll see you back at the other side. So as I said, the site was junction 13 of the M4, where it crosses the A34. And previously a grade separated junction, a real nasty congestion hotspot, and many a holiday to the southwest for many people. And as well as being an inconvenience to the travelling public, it's also insensitive to the neighbours, people that live and work in the area. So the contract that we undertook with we designer for Costains was to build a new dual carriageway that passed underneath the M4. It was a design and build contract, and we did a destiny, some ground investigation. So the destiny ground investigation interpretation had already been done by others that had identified solution features as a major risk. And as always with these schemes, once you take possession of something like a motorway or a trunk road, the programme has to be rapid, innovative and flexible, so that to the travelling public while you're doing the works. My role back in 2003 was something that we called the designer's site engineering geologist. And this was because, based on that test study in the GI that we already had, we had a design ground model, but because we were expecting uncertainty around solution features, we actually had to respond to the actual ground conditions, let's say near road design, manage those changes on site, and then, in the most part, select appropriate measures from a pre-designed selection of mitigation measures. There's Cheveley, right in the centre of the cave to the east to west, the M4 corridor towards Cardiff. A little bit closer, there's junction 13 between Newbury and Reading, and a bit closer still, you can see the original grade separated junction there. M4. The geology, well, it's chalk in outcrop across about half the site, and then the interface between the Lambeth Group and the Reading Formation and chalk actually outcropping within the works. And so when you get these unconformities, these periods of time, long periods of time where the position, sometimes exciting things happen there. As geologists, very often we get sucked into looking at what we could see in front of us, looking at what was deposited, but very often actually the risk and challenge comes from what's happened in the gaps when they go reposition and reconstructing what's happened in the time period. This is one of my experienced ideas, if you like, that that's really something that perhaps could do better as a profession, is making sure that we're all gaps in the position of trying to work out. So you can see from the outcrop, the chalk is the oldest, so that outcrops along the centre of a really broad, narrow
it's a broad wide valley, and there are actually 3 tributaries coming up the side, and you can see there the brown, that's London clay. London clay has pyrite in it, and pyrite oxidizes, it becomes acidic, and acidic waters tend to dissolve the chalk. That's one of the features that leads towards dissolution of the chalk. And then the valley features concentrate that runoff from the surrounding geology into the chalk. So that's also a feature that tends to increase the likelihood of dissolution. The red line there is the approximate alignment of the underpass. The gas building to it. And the geology, well, I said it was chalk. It's actually the middle chalk. It's a Seaford chalk formation of the middle chalk, which is a weak, medium density white chalk with predominantly nodular flint bands. But I'll come back to that. The Lambeth Group is the Reading formation, deposited in lowland swamps, channels, lagoons, and over main deposits close to a marine setting, but actually set back from that by. And then solution features, I mentioned this is where chalk gets dissolved and whatever is lying above the chalk sinks down to fill the space that's created by dissolving the chalk. So before we got to site, we had a fairly simple ground model. That's the chalk, was planed off, and the Lambeth Group deposited on top of it. We knew that there'd be channels in the Lambeth Group, and in places we could see that they'd actually down below the interface loaded into the chalk, and we knew there'd be solution features, but there was no way we could know where all those solution features were going to be. Just not cost effective to investigate to find all of them. So we have this toolkit of pre-designed measures implemented. So we had a general model for linear elements of the scheme, the cuttings and embankments. That was kind of a macro scale. We had specific models for structures with intensive ground investigation for foundations and walls, that's to the meso scale. And then we had ground truthing for high risk elements, so where you had a piled foundation for a bridge or a gantry, then you actually have to throw a pile. That's kind of a scale of investigation. Here's what a solution feature looks like. And they're brutes for engineering, they really are. That one there is around about 8 meters in diameter, comfortably 3 or 4 meters deep, and nearly vertical sided. Stuff that's inside it has collapsed down into that space, so it's metastable. So it won't have any meaningful bearing capacity, and if it gets wet, that metastability can be disturbed, and the chalk is prone to sort of drop out type settlement. Sorry, not the chalk, the infill is prone to drop out types. Very difficult to excavate out and replace because they're such steep-sided but deep excavations. So really, you're left with spanning solutions or piling through them type solutions. Because digging the place is actually rare, practical in the construction environment. So the first find, if you like, the first geological find is this dark clay. All the solution features that we found have this dark brown clay margin, very, very high plasticity. And this clay is actually, the chalks are around 98% calcium carbonate. That's the former. Then it's about 1% silica, which is what forms the bands, and then what's left is red volcanic clay. So the chalk's being deposited, if you can imagine, a big deep ocean with these coccoliths raining down as they die to settle on the seabed, but also a background noise of red clay settling out because this is the sort of time when the Atlantic was opening, when there was blade spreading down in Australia. So there was quite a lot of red clay in the atmosphere that also settled out onto seabed. For the most part in the chalk, the rate of coccolith sedimentation is so much higher than the rate of red clay sedimentation that you simply can't see it. But if you go to Hunstanton in the UK and Norfolk, that's an area where we have the red chalk, and that's where the rate of sedimentation of the coccolith was much lower, and so red clay becomes dominant found and it actually stains the chalk in its pink colour. In this context, when the chalk gets dissolved, that insoluble residue remains, and it remains as a high plasticity dark brown clay, which is so it's predominantly volcanic clay, and it's so high plasticity that it provides a kind of lubricating effect on the margins of the solution features, which allows the overlying soils to slump down as the hole gets made progressively bigger by the solution. The soil can slump down and slide into the solution feature. It's really low strength, high plasticity track. Next thing to consider then is the paleo environment of the Lambeth Group. Here's the sort of model I was describing with a transgressive barrier bar protecting a lagoonal environment behind it, channels through the lagoon, brackish lagoonal deposits, and as you move back further inland, tropical to subtropical environment, so you've got very strong leaching and pedogenesis soil formation with lots of burrowing and rootlets. And as you come out the other way, there's a shallow estuary or a restricted sea. If you come out far enough in there, the water depth is sufficiently deep that any sand or clay that gets deposited on the sea floor is actually anoxic. So if we focus in on that area, the up north formation is an anoxic sand deposit. The green colour comes from the glauconite in it, which hasn't oxidised, and it's a very distinctive marker bed in the Lambeth Group in general, and even in Reading, which is right at the inland end, the western end of the Lambeth Basin. You can see there the up north formation was green band. Clearly present at the junction where the Lambeth. Elsewhere, inland, the pedogenic deposits, very strong leaching environment, and here you can see what was once a flint band, now degraded to a gravel cobble layer sitting on top of the chalk. This is where the pedogenesis and leaching has broken down the flints. The orange colour is the iron that's leached down and left us actually at that interface with a fairly permeable granular soil. I mentioned the lagoon. In this slide at the top of the lagoon, you can see the laminated clays in the brackish water deposits, but also actually see the ripples that are on the top of the formation, where these deposits are being laid down. Elsewhere in the lagoon, much more regular laminated bedding. So this is beds of silt with beds of silty sand in between them. For anyone still at university or early career, I'd advise to just have a little think about what this would mean for drainage, a settlement problem. Where would you put your layers in, and how these more permeable layers would still be able to be settlement foundations form onto the soils. And then also within that lagoon, channels. And here's a picture of one of these channels that we found that had got down below the interface of the chalk. See here where we excavated it out, but then the channel feature extended all the way. So within those clay, silty, sandy film deposits, this was just a channel of pure size. Here's a view of, it's a long view, but you'll see in a second that there are 3 of these channels within the Lambeth Group. And then if you look at the chalk beneath the interface there, then there's an affinity between those channels in the Lambeth Group. Formation of solution features below. So to form those solution features, how do you do it? Well, the key is to introduce an aggressive groundwater. I mentioned the acidity that comes from the lumber clay, but also cold water close to freezing can dissolve around about 10 times more carbon dioxide than so periglacial rains and glacial meltwaters in the Ice Age much more aggressive to the chalk than modern day groundwater. So understanding that interplay of cold water running off of the plains, acidic, and then ways to concentrate that flow into the chalk, permeability of the chalk, and also aggressive groundwater pathway from source to that chalk. I mentioned the valleys that concentrate it. That's a feature of areas where we would expect to find blended. So when we revisit our earlier ground model, knowing what we can now see by digging in an absolute large trial pit, yes, there are solution features, but those solution features have this characteristic dark brown clay around. And that's a feature that you can really try to look out for in site investigations. If you did a trial pit and you found some regular looking Lambeth Group, also a layer of dark brown clay, then you would know that you're in an area of solution features. That Lambeth Group now we can split into the Up North Formation and the Reading Formation, and still with those channels that can cut down through the Up North Formation and into the chalk. The heterogenesis layer that reduces to a gravel, therefore has an affinity formation of solution features beneath it, and also channels. So that's the sort of geological model. I've now got on to describe a little bit of the engineering. So there's the map I showed you previously with north upwards, and if we can turn that on its side, now you can see the scheme. So the blue is the motorway, the M4, and the red is the A34, and there were 10 bridges in total, a large number of them in this area here, and then bridge 7 is one that I'll focus on a little bit more, and a retaining wall from the hotel just here, and bridges 1, 2, and 3, which are the main bridges that carry the M4 and the 2 slip roads over the Union. 1, 2, and 3 were built on contiguous board pile walls, large diameter board piles. The bridge decks were precast beams, precast off site, and came in special lorries with bogey trailers, and were installed onto the board piles. The width, overall width, was 22 meters and 15 meters at the deepest part from pavement to the pavement. In order to construct that, the first thing we did was build 2 embankments to widen the existing M4, and then we could split the carriageway and still have 3 lanes in each direction. open up the workspace in between to construct the floor piles. Those piles were constructed and the concrete precast beams were lifted onto the piles, and then once we've done that, we were able to switch the diverted carriageway onto our new bridge deck, and then continue piling to the south. And then once that was completed with the precast beams lifted into place, then could switch the traffic onto the central section and then onto our 2 sections of completed bridge, and go to the side. So I mentioned Bridge 7 and the retaining wall in front of the Hilton Hotel, and here you can see what looks like a photograph of 3 large but pretty regular solution features. These are like the ones I showed you earlier. But if we hop behind this safety barrier here onto the other side, that's actually one big solution feature. This was one of the biggest ones that we found. It's pretty close to the centre of the axis of that main valley, so it's right where we would expect the solution feature density to be most intense. Find the most solution features and in terms of investigation, I mentioned it's just not cost effective to find them. Imagine the difference between 2 boreholes. It's that easy to find one, it's that easy to miss one. So what we did was we designed the most credible conditions that we could from the ground investigation, but recognised that there was a possibility for it to be worse. So for the large diameter auger piles, the big piles under the bridge, then I spent many happy night shifts in the middle of the M4, freezing cold in the middle of winter, logging the horizons as they came out to check that the interface between the Lambeth Group and Shore was where we expected it. And if it wasn't, then inform the design office, and they could check the models against the as encountered conditions and decide what to deploy the designs. Once we got to excavate out the cutting, then logging of the interface and the excavation and cross-reference back to the horizons logging to make sure that the interface was still where we needed it, and where we had actually loaded piles for other bridge foundations and did that each one of those pile locations. Here's a dynamic probing profile, regular profile or a normal profile, like its most solution feature. Here's a profile where there was a solution feature. I have to say they weren't all quite good as that, but on the whole, it gave us a really good help on whether our design pile length was okay or whether we needed to extend. So, design for the most credible, and if the conditions were worse, then we had the capacity to extend CFA files, and in the event we didn't have to do the board pile walls, they were the as encountered conditions were fine compared to in cut slopes. We'd originally planned to dig them out and replace them with compacted chalk, but actually that's a really difficult operation. Pattern like that, and so we looked at each individual solution feature in terms of size, and even the biggest one was able to arch and span in section to leave the situ. In the formation, a range of sizes. This was probably the most difficult one, and for this one, it's a geogrid mattress over it, and also a thin reinforced concrete capping. The capping to manage infiltration, because we didn't want to get in and collapse, and then the geogrid mattress to provide a bit of tensile strength to the pavement that went over it. The pavement, you can see being constructed on the right side. That's the capping for the road coming along. So you can imagine how popular I was with site agent for the pavement while I was waiting for them to decide what to do. Solution feature. Got on fantastically. Really so for cut slopes, excavate and replace, install drainage, or leave if the shape is in the formation. We have the option to excavate and replace, but we only tried it once and it was horrible. It was really difficult to recompact anything into a sensible size excavation. So we left that alone. We had stabilised capping, G-beam matrices, and it was concrete. So just to recap, my role with design and site engineering geologist, it was absolutely fantastic for a sort of early career professional to get out on the site, really see some unprecedented exposures and get to understand the mechanism of solution feature formation and all this. And also have this ability to flexibly implement a toolkit of redesign options to respond to the actual ground conditions. Lessons learned: concentration of aggressive water on the surface of the chalk is the key to finding areas of more concentrated solution feature activity. In the Lambeth Group, consider the published models and understand that in the context of the transgressions of the upper formation and regressions, periods of pedogenesis, and look for those distinctive deposits in GI. In terms of conclusions, it's not efficient or cost effective to design out solutions. There will be some that you're expecting, but there will be many. So you have to flexible design that you can make observations and continuous development. Manage that ground model on site with backup office support to check the structural design, the technical design, and implement your mitigations. That's the end of the Glossop Award presentation. I think I mentioned in my introduction that I work from Oxford. I've worked from Oxford for 22 years. And one way to really feel that 22 years is in the logo. So I'm now on my third McDonald logo. The one there is the original. So usual disclaimer applies. Everything that you've heard today is I hope you enjoyed that presentation. So what I thought I'd do now is go back to my photo. I'll just talk through the other slides that I've got to show you some more things in perhaps a bit more detail. This is another close-up photo of that penegenesis layer, and perhaps easier to see here how the flints get broken down from a tabular flint at the bottom into cobble size and then gravel size and even sand size. And so quite easy to see how that might have a increased propensity of solution features forming beneath it. It's a means of concentrating aggressive groundwater. This is just for pure geology. Not quite sure what these features are. They're little bodies of sand that have somehow become incorporated into a bed of silt. They look like they've sunk down from above. Perhaps an intermediate layer that was deposited in subsequent before this layer was deposited on top. And there's a close-up so you can see that as it's sunk down into that silt layer, the bedding has become disturbed and distorted. Some little burrow holes in here as well. To see those. Look also how quickly silt layers have desiccated and cracked. So that's just showing how silty they are, how sensitive they are to moisture change and drying. Here's a lovely photo of those lagoonal deposits and the layering of sand parting between silt and here's a bit of burrowing in a sand deposit, so perhaps in one of those channel deposits, you can see some burrow features. Here's some micro faulting within a channel sand deposit, a bit more burrowing over here. Really fantastic stuff for a geologist. This is the sort of thing that really make the day when stumbling across one of these. There's a proper burrow. I don't know what that's a burrow of. That's certainly a burrow in laminated sands. This one is quite difficult to see, but actually I'm stood. When I took this one, I was stood on the interface with the chalk, and there was a solution feature there. And if you can get your eye in, you can't just trust me, but there's actually slumping in the fabric, in the laminations of the Lambeth Group here, as that soil is starting to sink downwards into a solution feature. So this one we've already seen, but it's a beauty, isn't it? That's the solution feature cut slope. If you didn't believe me on the previous one, maybe this one's clearer. This is looking along. You can see here that bedding should be this plane parallel to the interface with the chalk, but you can see Lambeth Group slumping to solution feature for that. This next few photos are something that I just didn't have time to include in the Glossop Award. It's another really fascinating class of solution features. What we found was that there was a tabular flint band, and you also get sheet flints, which are not as thick as these. You can see that there's maybe 100 mil thick. You can get sheet flints that are only 10 or 15 mil. And Rory Mortimer showed me pictures from North French chalk cliffs where there's groundwater seeping out along these flint bands, and clearly in the Ice Age something similar was happening here. That the aggressive groundwater has got concentrated at this tabular flint band, and then perhaps a hole in the flint band has concentrated it downwards, and we've got this small cavity that's been dissolved out underneath the flint band, but the flint band's still strong enough to arch over it, so you don't get that slumping, you don't get that collapse, you get an open hole. There's one of these tabular flints that was arching over it. Seen that one. This was the most extreme expression of that sort of mechanism. These were the only cavities that we found on the job. Everything else was slumped infill solution features, but here you can see a 300-400 meter diameter shaft that's nearly 4 meters deep. And there's a view inside it, and this is a hole that developed by dissolution where the top was spat over by that. Here we are back at the chalk interface with the Up North Formation, a different location. And again, there's actually ripples on the top of the chalk this time. That's another view of that marker bed formation, and then transitioning. There's a time horizon here. I mentioned the time that there's no deep position. That's where the ripples form. Photograph, and then the laminated beds on top. There's some smaller scale burrowing within sands. There's a close up of the ripples. On the scene. Here's one of the solution features, and again, just notice dark brown clay. Also, this shear surface here. That's a close up of that shear surface. So that's the slumping mechanism as the Lambeth Group goes into the solution feature. It's almost vertical, subvertical, at least 70 degrees, and then the Lambeth Group shearing along, possibly along those partings in the deposit. There's the brown clay again. Yeah, seeing that one, that's the 3 solution features. Or there's a more typical solution feature in the pavement. This one much smaller. That one would have just had a small reinforced concrete slab, a layer of mesh into concrete, just to cap it off, stop the water getting in, to stop the metastable infill collapse, and provide a bit of tensile strength to the base of the pavement to just cover over any potential slip. Here's another solution feature. We've got the brown clay on the side. We've got the up north formation here. But have a look at this raft of material. Again, slumping down, and you can see that as it's slumped down, there's more shear here, and then any of the beds that were continuous from there have sheared down into the solution feature underneath it. So this material, all residual strength, quite high void ratio, because it's now filling a bigger volume than it was previously. An intact block, a lock thinners block of Lambeth Group there, and more shear surfaces visible here.
So I've got to apologise for the sound quality on some of that video. It wasn't my best work. I will endeavour to do better next time. But even so, I hope you enjoyed seeing those fantastic exposures, solution features, and the incredible detail and the incredible scale of detail in the Lambeth Group, in the Reading formation, the up north formation. Next presentation is probably going to be an interview. I've got a number of interviews lined up with friends, peers and colleagues, and mentors as well, discussing various things. So watch out for that, and also watch out for the talk I gave at the BGA 2020 Pioneering 2020 conference. That's another one from Boston, looking at the 7 details that we had to work up for anchored sheet pile walls to work our way around the various constraints on the site. Some fairly imaginative and innovative stuff that we did there. As always, if you haven't already, please do take the half a second it takes to press the subscribe button, give us a like, share the video with friends or colleagues that you think might be interested, and help us spread the good word of engineering geology to the masses. Cheers, right, appreciate it, and we'll see you soon in the next video. Thanks for now.